Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Robots, cyborgs, and life extension technology. These terms are familiar to any fan of science fiction, but now, to some disbelief, these technologies are a science reality. In part 1 of this report, we expose some startling connections between 19th and 20th century secret societies, their occult technological experiments, and the emerging automated prison society that is rapidly descending upon us. In part 2, we look at a possible motivation for the elite who are financing this emerging new world, a world whose construction started centuries ago. In April of 2000, Wired magazine published an article, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. It was written by Sun Microsystems co-founder Bill Joy. In it, he quotes Ray Kurzweil's book, The Age of Spiritual Machines. If the elite are ruthless, they may simply decide to exterminate the mass of humanity. If they are humane, they may use propaganda or other psychological or biological techniques to reduce the birth rate until the mass of humanity becomes extinct, leaving the world to the elite. What makes this article and quote even more interesting than one tech pioneer quoting another is the footnote at the bottom of the article. The passage Kurzweil quotes is from Ted Kaczynski's Unabomber manifesto, which was published jointly, under duress, by the New York Times and the Washington Post to attempt to bring his campaign of terror to an end. Why would tech industry leaders go out of their way to quote Kaczynski's Unabomber manifesto in not one but 2 separate publications? Well, for those of you who skip past the 35,000-word manifesto that appeared in both the New York Times and Washington Post on the morning of September 22, 1995, there were some very telling things printed on those pages. Within his article, Joy himself writes about the quote, I am no apologist for Kaczynski. His bombs killed 3 people during a 17-year terror campaign and wounded many others. Kaczynski's actions were murderous and, in my view, criminally insane. He is clearly a Luddite, but simply saying this does not dismiss his argument. As difficult as it is for me to acknowledge, I saw some merit in the reasoning in this single passage. I felt compelled to confront it. We at Infowars share a similar point of view as Joy about the manifesto. Like Bill Joy, we do not consider ourselves Luddites. We often discuss humanity's fate, traveling the stars. However, we also recognize that some of the words written within Ted Kaczynski's text shouldn't be simply dismissed as writings of a madman, but should be given special attention and careful thought. Before he was the Unabomber, Kaczynski was considered a child prodigy, and he was accepted into Harvard College at the age of 16. He was among 22 students who were research subjects in what has been described as brutalizing psychological experiments, conducted by Henry Murray and rumored to be part of the MK Ultra program. Kaczynski was an eyewitness to some of the most cutting-edge technological experiments of his day. It seems reasonable that Kurzweil, Joy, and others might be interested to see what insights he reveals in his writings. Kaczynski's manifesto touches upon a wide range of subjects, including this one in paragraph 157, where he writes, It has been established beyond any rational doubt that human thought and behavior have a largely biological basis. As experimenters have demonstrated, feelings such as hunger, pleasure, anger, and fear can be turned on and off by electrical stimulation of appropriate parts of the brain. Memories can be destroyed by damaging parts of the brain, or they can be brought to the surface by electrical stimulation. In that last phrase, Kaczynski accurately describes experiments dealing with mind control technology. These mind control experiments weren't isolated in elite university labs. They were conducted on a large portion of the population, oftentimes within the military.
Secretary of Energy O'Leary during the Clinton administration admitted over 500,000 Americans were used as experimental guinea pigs for various programs. Many of them military personnel, as well as other people that really didn't have the right or ability to speak up for themselves.
Tech journalist Dr. Nick Begich has been covering the subject of mind control technology for more than 25 years.
The idea of using mind control techniques in modern warfare, this is the direction in which we're headed. Being able to manipulate governments, populations in a way that avoids the direct conflict but creates the same outcome, which is a pacified society.
Begich reminds us that the experiments and development of technology geared towards the controlling of the human mind has never ceased, and that there can be serious consequences if this technology gets into the wrong hands.
This is the direction in which much of our military technology is headed today, because the idea is if you can direct and control the internal workings of the human mind, of the brain itself, not only for communication or manipulation of our own troops, but for the degradation of our adversaries. And yet you don't create the kind of property damage that modern warfare generally creates. So you're able to manipulate the entire populations or great segments of the population for political or military ends.
Brainwashing and mind-reading devices seem like something directly out of a fictional novel. Yet this technology isn't even cutting edge anymore. Universities have been researching mind control systems for decades, including the technology to wipe one's memory, exactly as described by Kaczynski in his manifesto.
In fact, some of this research is being now conducted, so-called for the benefit of veterans, because of traumas experienced during war, the results of those traumas. And the idea is just to be able to wipe memory. In other words, looking at veterans, returning veterans with post-traumatic stress syndrome, and being able to go in and sort of wipe out those memories that are giving them the problems.
In the 1950s and 60s, Dr. Jose Delgado pioneered mind implant technology using mostly animal subjects and, controversially, some human subjects as well. Delgado's research included the insertion of electrodes into the brain. He discovered that certain electrical frequencies can significantly control behavior and emotions. In 1963, Delgado conducted an experiment involving an implanted bull. Using a radio controller, Delgado caused a charging bull to come to a complete halt. During an interview about the experiment, Delgado shared his vision of how the future will be. He said, "We must electronically control the brain. Someday, armies and generals will be controlled by electrical stimulation of the brain." Due to a lawsuit launched by a few of the human implant subjects, Delgado decided to leave the United States and continue his work in his birthplace, Madrid.
By the 1980s, Jose Delgado had developed technology where you needed no implants whatsoever. The only thing that you needed to do was stimulate the brain with really, really low energy densities.
The technology to wipe an individual's memories is just the beginning. What about restoring memories? In 2014, DARPA announced that it will be funding research into neuroprosthesis that will help people with brain trauma recover their long-term memories. While this by itself might be a noble act, technology, of course, will continue to progress. This July 2014 article from the Los Angeles Times predicts that if the effort succeeds, healthy people too may one day clamor for implantable brain gear that can turbocharge human cognition. In fact, Google's director of engineering, Ray Kurzweil, is counting on it. He predicts humans will be hybrids by the 2030s. We're starting to see more unbelievable technologies being written about and even released to the public. 3D vaccines, cochlear implants that send sounds electronically to the brain, FDA-approved bionic eyes, brain scanners successfully able to read and recreate images in our minds, and thanks to brain implantable microchips, brain-to-brain verbal communication between humans has already been electronically achieved. And considering the inevitable automated workforce, it's possible that the only way for humans to remain a useful element in the future economy will be electronically enhanced bodies and minds, to become part man and part robot, into what some sci-fi novelists call a cyborg. So while the operators of this new technological paradigm enhance their own abilities to match their robotic counterparts, they will also be electronically enslaving the remainder of the human mind and soul. This description of present-day technology and possible future applications wouldn't be complete without mentioning the advancements in anti-aging. Dr. Aubrey DeGrey is a leader in the field of gerontology. He says that the aim of his SENS Research Institute isn't to create life extension technology, but to study the problem of how our bodies become sick as we age and to solve it. DeGrey says that the aim of his work is to postpone aging, not prolong life. Longevity, however, might be one of those desirable side effects of his research.
We are just a biomedical research institute. We do the same kind of research that anyone else does who is trying to develop new medicine. But of course, biomedical research is focused on the diseases and disabilities of old age. And we believe that we can indefinitely prevent those diseases with medicines that we think could be developed within the next couple of decades.
A medical understanding that will keep people youthful and healthy throughout the course of their now extended lives. While much of the technology discussed so far is based on the benefit of a small, controlling elite, Dr. DeGrey believes the therapy he's working on will be available to the masses.
Absolutely, it's going to be for everyone. The period when it's only available to a minority of people will be very short indeed. The reason I can be so sure about it is not because of any kind of utopian, humanitarian desire. It's simply mercenary economics. These therapies will pay for themselves so incredibly quickly and so astronomically that it would be economically just suicide for any country not to do this, not to front-load the investment to make sure that everybody who's old enough to need these therapies will be able to get them, whether or not they can pay.
Dr. DeGrey's research does not currently involve experiments using implant technology, but as he explains, all technologies will eventually integrate with each other. Therefore, his research, combined with the aid of implantable tech, might actually create the eternal man.
Now, we aren't doing anything with implants, so I see this as being a process of improving and developing synergy between all of these technologies, both implantables and non-implantables, and making sure that they work together in tandem to actually preserve health in the way that we desire.
As we put all of the different aspects of the next generation of technology together, a truly frightening world begins to emerge. A corporate machine force working the earth and its elements at the behest of a superhuman, electronically psychic, and immortal social elite, with no room left for ordinary humans. A scenario like this, of course, doesn't seem real at all, and yet we're almost certainly headed in that direction. We are headed toward a bizarre, anti-human future, what some elitists call the New World Order, and it's no accident. In 1940, H.G. Wells published a non-fiction book entitled The New World Order. In it, he calls for a New World Order as a way to end wars for good, even though he admits countless people will hate the New World Order and die protesting against it. Wells's prediction for a New World Order was certainly not the only one. Some writers called for a New World Order decades earlier.
The thought that, basically mankind, not everybody was equal in mankind. No, there was an elite and there was a huge underclass that had to be steered and even exterminated if that needed be. We find these plans clearly outlined in some of the 19th century Victorian science fiction novels.
In the late 19th century, science fiction novels were published like William Delisle Hayes's 300 Years Hence, or A Voice from Posterity, which describes a eugenics-based society wiping out complete races of people, domed cities, impressive technology, and a one-world order.
Now, these books are very obscure. You rarely find them, but if you find them and if you read them, you'll be chilled to the bone, because everything that happened in Nazi Germany with the extermination of entire groups of people, in some of those 19th century science fiction books, we already see these blueprints neatly laid out.
In the 20th century, high-ranking political and scientific disciples of occult organizations attempted to make the technology as well as the politics in these books a reality. Late 19th and early 20th century German occultist George Lanz von Liebenfels envisioned a race of enhanced superhumans with extraordinary electrical senses that can sense images and realities hidden to ordinary human beings.
George Lans van Liebenfels, his book Elektrotheologie, described a kind of a race of man, a god man, equipped with organs more than biological organs. They were a mix, say, an evolution of the biological, in the sense that these were electrical organs, and let's say where they could envision more than we can see or envision with our five senses.
Enhanced implantable electrical organs that control machines and read minds using only the power of thought? If it seems like this report is slipping into fantasy, check out some of these headlines. In 2002, Science Daily reported DARPA to support development of brain-machine interfaces. Singularity Hub reported in 2011, revolutionary new brain chip allows monkeys to grasp and feel objects using their thoughts. In 2013, MIT Technology Review published Samsung demos a tablet controlled by your brain. And also in 2013, CNET reports DARPA developing implant to monitor brain in real time. Forget wearable tech, embeddable implants are already here from CNN. Or future potential of brain chip is limitless after man controls robot arm with his thoughts. And in 2015, TechCrunch reported the ultimate interface is your brain. Nanotech and AI was discussed this year at the annual Bilderberg Conference. Investment Watch reports Bilderberg 2015 agenda. Former DARPA director Regina Dugan to discuss artificial intelligence. Dugan is behind the idea of an ingestible identification microchip. It seems that all of those sci-fi fantasies and ideas put forward by occultists like George Lans van Liebenfels and others are actually materializing.
This was one of the aims, the true aims of some of these occult orders, to become like a god. But you can't simply become like a god, so what you have to do is you have to enhance your body. And you can't, enhance your body solely by biological means. You can enhance your body with through electromagnetic means, or what we see today, which we call transhumanism.
Transhumanism is a movement dedicated to the embrace of the latest technologies, with the ultimate aim being the enhanced and immortal superhuman.
These new things that are now at the forefront of technology and philosophy, and which is combined, we find it in transhumanism, goes back, in fact, many centuries.
While Aubrey DeGrey's research doesn't specifically aim to invent a life extension technology, he is still considered by many to be a leading figure in the transhumanist movement.
As a movement, it's really a group of advocates for technological visionaryism, so to speak. We want to actually get people to think more clearly, more rationally, more intelligently about the prospect of dramatically more powerful technology, whether medical or other.
Other leading figures in the transhumanist movement is inventor, Google's director of engineering, and Singularity University's founder, Ray Kurzweil. Kurzweil talks about the singularity, a moment in the future when machines will achieve more intelligence than humans. In order for humans to keep up, we will have to reinvent ourselves with the help of nanobots and medical implants.
Really what he's saying there is that as time goes on, and as we achieve greater and greater miniaturization, especially of various devices, we will have a greater and greater ability to apply, let's call it just simply non-biological solutions to various medical problems, including the problems of aging. And those non-biological solutions will eventually take over, really. They will become dominant as what we do medically.
We're going to be able to send nanobots, blood cell-sized devices, inside our bloodstream. They'll keep us healthy from inside, and they'll go inside our brains. And if that sounds very futuristic, there are already people that have computers in their brains.
Kurzweil believes eventually technology will be advanced enough for us to upload our consciousness to a mainframe computer where unlimited possibilities await.
In some ways, the transhumanist movement is its own worst enemy because it often alienates itself from the general public by sounding too radical. I think that the best way to get the future to happen sooner is to communicate to people that this is not scary, this is simply a continuation of the technological progress that we've seen in the past.
The picture that we're painting for you about technology is not a pretty one. Many feel that technology will advance, and there's not much anyone can do to prevent that, so what's the point? But is this really the world we want to live in? Forget the Unabomber's vision of returning to a hunter-gatherer society. Is there another way? In Part 3 of this report, we'll shift our focus from threats posed by an out-of-control technological paradigm to real advances that we can use right now that will improve all of our lives, without the possibility of wiping out humanity.
Brain Force is here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of Brain Force.
One of the worst things with most energy products is it's not sustainable, right? You're gonna crash afterwards. And the cool thing about this is it's not just a bunch of energy compounds that are gonna fire your brain up to a higher RPM or whatever, which it does do. This is sustainable. This isn't going to spike and you're gonna collapse and you're gonna feel really bad afterwards. This has a bunch of different antioxidants and compounds and polyphenols.
Everybody's on these drugs to knock their brain out because the brain's so fried.
We kept changing this formula over and over and over again until it became sort of a grand puzzle. For example, the L-theanine inside of it, that is activated by the different compounds in the yerba mate that we put inside of it as well. This just increases the compounds you already have.
This is what you're actually designed to run on.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a car will run on one form of junkie gas, but it runs really good on what it's designed for.
And that's the principle of Infowars Life, as far as I understand, that you've always had, is that it's not about synthetic chemicals and forcing actions. It's about letting your body do its own thing and giving your body the tools it needs to create these different compounds that are super valuable and super beneficial. We've all been dumbed down, whether we know it or not. There's always hidden additives in your food. Even organic food has hidden additives. I mean, we're looking at the television screen, at least, you know, for research purposes, or whatever we've been doing, trying to learn something, or staring at the computer all day, working, doing good, you're still damaging your brain.
You will find Brain Force, Survival Shield X2, and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.